Blockchain Chatter, brought to you by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. Welcome to Blockchain Chatter, the show where blockchain leaders join me for a chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and in episode 4, I'm joined by Shane Verner from Fireblocks. Normally I do a bit of an intro, but I thought this time I'd let Shane tell you all about Fireblocks and what they do. Shane, welcome to the show.
Hey Dexter, thanks so much for having me, mate. Thrilled to be on. So what does Fireblocks do? I think it's always helpful to start with what we're not. We're in a really fortunate position in this space to be kind of the 800-pound gorilla, and so we often get referenced in the press, both domestically and abroad. And I think, there was an article in the Australian Financial Review mid last year when we helped a major bank launch a stablecoin that referred to us as the world's largest regulated crypto custodian. It'd be great if we were those things, but we're actually neither. We're not regulated, and nor are we a custodian. We, rather, on the other side of things, we actually enable our institutional customers to self-custody. Secure direct custody is really what we're about. And we get called a Fintech as well, and we're not one of them either. We're very much, I think, in many ways, a traditional Israeli cybersecurity company. We just happen to be a cyber firm focused purely on digital assets. So secure direct custody is at the heart of everything we do.
So true cryptography, eh? Not
Indeed, mate, indeed.
Awesome. Now you kind of touched there a little bit on the stablecoin project you were involved in. Before, I'd like to talk to you about that a little bit later, but before we do, could you kind of tell us a little bit about who some of your customers and clients are, the types of businesses that you work with?
Yeah. So, we came out of stealth in 2019. And since then, we've managed to onboard some 1,700 institutional clients of all different sorts around the world. Locally, I joined in 2019, and we've got 91 institutions on board in Australia and New Zealand. And they cross, a formidable cross-section of the corporate universe from TradFi, where they're looking for secure custody and offering wallet services, and they're looking to tokenize everything. And you've read all the articles that I have, right? TradFi's long-term thesis is everything's going to be tokenized and many things are going to be solved on the chain that are big problems that exist today. TradFi is a significant segment of our market. Retail are doing really interesting things. In the traditional retail, you look at what Gucci's done, and Mercedes done, and Ticketek have minted some 50 million NFTs as tickets, and most holders don't even know they're NFTs. Payments is something that we're increasingly getting into with an acquisition that we made last year and offering secure payment rails around cryptocurrencies. But our bread and butter has always been that sort of traditional crypto space with the exchanges and the funds in that space. But I think most interestingly, Dexter, Web3 is where all the groovy innovation's happening now.
Yeah.
That whole NFT, DeFi, Web3 space, that's where the VCs are now.
Yeah. And how would you kind of summarize Web3? Because everybody's got their own interpretation of it. What is it to you?
We put it into 3 segments, I think. There's the NFTs that we mentioned. There's DeFi, decentralized finance, in all its different shapes. And I think probably the most profitable one and the least heralded is GameFi. We fit that in Web3 well. We hear a lot about the metaverse, and we see organizations like Tiffany and Nike and others that are engaging an audience that they couldn't otherwise engage there. And they're, I think Tiffany's did extraordinarily well. Was it 90 million they did out of that Punks necklace thing? Gucci was another global brand that built a sandbox ecosystem in the metaverse. So they're coming. They're not coming quickly, though, I don't think.
Yeah. My kids are big Roblox players, and they've actually stopped playing as much since Elton John came on the platform. Like, this isn't very cool.
He's older than my dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Did your kids get an art ball at the Australian Open?
No. So we've not looked into that, but it's fascinating though. The when you mentioned their ticket tech, and I think you look at the use case for tickets, right, to events. It's so strong, right? It's such a strong use case.
No, it's extraordinary. I think the number's 50 million NFTs that ticket tech have minted.
Wow.
It's an extraordinary number. And I wonder how many of those holders realize that it's an NFT.
Yeah.
1%.
And so when you talk about the Fireblocks business, can you tell us a little bit about who they are, where they originated, a little bit of the backstory, and kind of where you're at now in terms of scale and size and countries that you operate in?
Okay, there's a bunch of questions in there. So it was founded by, it's actually a cool story how it was founded, by three gentlemen out of Tel Aviv. They had their original startup, they exited to Checkpoint, who you'd know, mate, very well, a giant in the traditional Web 2 security space. I used to be with Cisco a long time ago, and they were our major competitor. We were probably a fly on their bum at the time, but they're a giant. So our three founders exited to Checkpoint, and while they were there, the Lazarus Group hack occurred. I think it was 2017. So that's where North Korean hackers attacked 3 South Korean exchanges and stole $200 million worth of Bitcoin. So our boys were called in to provide sort of a forensic audit of what went on. And while they were there, they sort of spotted this market opportunity to secure wallets on the blockchain. So that's really at the heart of everything we do. Since then, so we came out of stealth, as I mentioned, in 2019. We've raised $1 billion US at a valuation of $8 billion. We have some 1,700 institutional customers around the world, some $3.5 US trillion worth of crypto transactions have gone across the Fireblocks network. 700 staff almost,
wow.
680 staff. So including 75-ish in the APAC region. We just had our sales kickoff last week in Singapore. I'm still slightly hungover. So
it's the humidity, not the alcohol.
It was the humidity. It wasn't the lack of calories or the lack of alcohol, I assure you. So we've got a real presence. So 75 people around APAC. The lion's share, of course, in North America and EMEA, with the central product office based in Tel Aviv. So we've had an extraordinary ascension. Dexter, I think I'm right in saying that we're the second fastest organization ever to achieve $100 million US in recurring revenue.
Wow.
So we're purely that SaaS model. So
that's 100 million in recurring revenue, you said, annual recurring revenue.
Annual recurring revenue, yeah.
Wow.
So the fastest of all time was Slack, of all things. Wouldn't have been my success. Yeah.
It's amazing, eh? And in terms of, I guess, the some of the cool things that you've been doing. So you touched on this earlier. There was the big project last year with ANZ and the stable coin. Can you talk us a little bit through that?
Sure. I'm of course limited, Dexter, to what's public. Because
absolutely.
ANZ efforts, as you'd imagine, are still ongoing. So ANZ Bank, I think in April last year, released the $1DC stablecoin. That was big news at the time. That was the first major bank to produce their own stablecoin. So you would have seen NAB in the AFR last week released the second one domestically. So ANZ created that trend. I think it's fair to say it certainly got the attention locally and indeed globally. That was an extraordinary piece of work. Fireblocks provides the secure infrastructure, the plumbing, if you like, to enable that. And it was an ecosystem of players. It wasn't just ANZ and Fireblocks by any means, but they produced the smart contract that represents the stablecoin. And they did it from soup to nuts, standing it up on Fireblocks in 99 days.
Wow.
Now, Dexter, you've been around banking and banks for a long time. You understand absolutely nothing gets done in 99 days in a legacy bank, particularly one the size of the ANZ Bank. And I think they might be the largest institutional bank who gave birth to this stablecoin in Australia. So it is a great piece of work. They had, the right individuals on it. And that was everybody. They got the right regulators involved, the right senior executives involved. It was an exceptionally quick, incredibly well received piece of work.
Mm. What was it about Australia that attracted Fireblocks?
Don't you think? I mean, you and I had a chat earlier. Don't you think Australia's a remarkably, particularly institutional Australia, is a remarkably early adopter of new innovative tech that's seeking to disrupt big problems and legacy systems. I think we're a soft landing for any sort of organisation like Fireblocks. Us, New Zealand, certain islands of North America. I think we have major institutions that, although they're concentrated, we only have sort of 4 major banks and 2 major telcos, 2 major retailers, a couple of mines, they're still filled with innovative, incredibly clever people looking to pull cost out, add revenue, beat the competitor, those sorts of things, solve big problems and big old problems.
Yeah, you've done the country manager or kind of work with international businesses quite a few times. One of the things that I often say to any organization that's looking to launch here in Oz is, it's a highly competitive market, right? Like this, it's kind of fiercely competitive. And I think there's a perception that certainly organizations coming here think that it's a bit backward and that there's not a great deal of competition. How have you found, kind of particularly in this space, the competition, and where would you say kind of innovation is at? And and I know I'm loading a lot of questions here. And more importantly, like what the founders in Tel Aviv, like what have they said about Australia and what they think about, the ecosystem here?
I think there's 3 questions in there. The first question is about competition. There are 46 potential competitors that we have globally. There are major competitors, and I'd hate to offend anybody, but I think there's only 4 or 5 of them that are really significant institutional players, right? It's a bit of a condensed market at the moment. Keep in mind, Dexter, that's really early days in this space. I think everybody would agree. So when I first started, I didn't run into a competitor for a couple of months in a meaningful way. Since then, I'm incredibly sad to say the 3 major ones have hit our shores, and they're establishing their beachhead. That's fine. The market's big enough for all of us, I'm sure. Your second question was, what does Tel Aviv, what's head office think? I think they're thrilled. The ANZ Bank was the first major bank in the world that did a real in-production, go public transaction that had the view of the regulators, that had the view of significant institutional customers, that had the view of a market maker in zero cap. And I know you know my rank, Brian. So it got everybody's attention, and I think we've touched several groundbreaking use cases here in Australia. You look what the DFCRC and the RBA are doing with the CBDC. This is in many ways a world-leading program of work. It was publicly announced. Was it 162 use cases submitted to the DFCRC to leverage the CBDC? It's a staggering number.
Yeah.
So I think our international leaders see this as a market that isn't just following; it's leading in many ways. Our clients certainly are. And the third question that you asked, buried in there, Dexter, I've forgotten.
I think it was kind of a double-barreled one that you've already answered, which was which I think it tied into I guess the thoughts on what's happening here in Oz from leadership and the buy-in that you've got, and it's always a really difficult thing, right? To get
that are a little bit unique and a little bit away from that big bank, big retailer end of town.
Yeah,
the thing that staggers me the most. In the tokenization space, the number of carbon tokenization plays and ESG-related plays, I shouldn't be surprised given that what a huge agriculture and mining nation that we are. But the number of very clever people approaching it, innovators and entrepreneurs approaching it from all sorts of different angles.
Yeah.
And they're right at the top of town and guys that have just been funded yesterday sort of thing. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think, 2023, a lot of these programs of work that are up and running today, but they haven't gone live. They haven't come out of beta yet.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna get world headlines. I really do, particularly in one case as an organization I just love that will make a real splash, I believe. And the other thing that surprised me most recently, certainly in the last half of last year, was the number of, and I shouldn't be surprised with this, but I am, the number of Web3 horse racing, horse breeding, horse-related Web3 plays, whether it's tokenizing a horse, and you sort of have to scratch your head and go, well, how are they doing that? And I'm going to be reluctant to sort of answer that. And why would they do that?
Yeah.
But watch Imagine run away for a little while. It's kind of fascinating. And then there's that online gaming around horse avatars, which it stuns me how popular it is. And we've had multiple programs pursuing this because, again, we're that plumbing, that secure custody, that reveals that sort of thing. One of the ecosystem partners that enables it. It's very cool.
Awesome. Now, I alluded to this a little bit earlier in the chat, Shane, about your background. And I wondered if you could maybe share with the viewers a little bit more about yourself and kind of how you kind of ended up in the world of Web3.
Yeah. I think all the best things you fall backwards into, don't you? You can't. Yeah. It's not a plan. I've been in Melbourne. I'm a country Queenslander who fell in love with Melbourne a couple of decades ago, and sort of why wouldn't you, Dexter? And so I bounced around some fabulous organizations, SIs and vendors like Dimension Data and Cisco and EMC and IBM. So I was that really big tech end of town and always customer facing, always sales focused and sales leader focused. But sort of the last 5 years, I was focused more on that startup-y side of the world, both, helping companies out like Galileo Ventures, who are VC, and attached to organizations like Enterprise Ireland. But for my day job, I was with MongoDB, a database company that was a great disruptor and was put on the planet to give Oracle a black eye. So that was a lot of fun. And I left them and joined Thought Machine, a cloud-native core banking system, trying to get the major banks in Australia and the major financial organizations to move off those IBM mainframes that sit at the heart of everything that they do onto a cloud-native, incredibly agile environment. And while I was there, I bumped into some very clever people in Singapore that represented Fireblocks, and we started to do a deal together. And then we realized, hey, you know what? I realized that Fireblocks might be the most interesting company with the most diverse cross-section of clients I've ever encountered. Yeah. So when I got the opportunity to join, mate, and be the first person in country, I didn't take any convincing at all.
No, it's Thought Machine, really interesting organization as well, and a lot of work, and that I think I've been heavily involved in as well over the last 4 or 5 years. Despite, I guess, the leaps that we've made in technology and innovation, there is still this real challenge to get banks to evolve and innovate. You talked about being able to do what you've done with Fireblocks and ANZ within 99 days. what would you say was the kind of the catalyst or the enabler to do that? Given that a lot of these, a thought machine project is going to take 18 months to kind of implement if you can do it that way.
Exactly, but the big difference is there isn't a major institutional customer telling the ANZ Bank that they need to change their core banking system. I mean, I don't know that for certain, but I'd be stunned if there was, or in the bank. Whereas there was a major institutional customer in the Smorgon Group, who are their oldest institutional customer that started banking with them in 1897. That's a number.
Wow, isn't that though, right? A really great story and narrative around innovation, right?
That's why they're still relevant.
The dinosaurs, eh?
All evidence to the contrary, right?
Yeah.
That institutional push, that liquidity event, that, hey, you're my banking partner and you have been for 125 years. I want you to do this. And when that happens, banks are very customer focused, as you know.
Yeah. It's a really great point that you've made, Shane, because I was talking to somebody just the other day and we were talking about the stuff that, we put up with from our banks, from a customer service perspective, particularly in business banking, right? Where it's just very different experience to being a retail customer. And, I've made the point that, my kids are just not going to tolerate what I tolerate, right? Or what you might tolerate. And it's interesting to hear that the kind of innovation push has come from the customer, not from the kind of internal desire to innovate and, kind of do things better. And it's why I say that is that what I've found really interesting over the last decade or so, particularly in corporate Australia, has been that a lot of the innovation that's been kind of claimed or, has been heralded has been actually internal innovation that the customers not really experienced, right? So from a product perspective, the products haven't really changed. There might be a slightly better UX, I might have a slightly better running app, but as a customer, a mortgage product is still exactly the same kind of product I would have got 30 years back.
Yeah.
So I find it fascinating, right? That the kind of push is coming from the customer here.
I'm not sure. I absolutely hear what you're saying. I'm not sure that it's the push, because I think the push from the bankers that I've dealt with over the last 20 odd years, they want to innovate. They want to solve big problems. They want to get rid of this, but it's the urgency that the customers have. If you give an institutional customer says, I need tens of millions of dollars of my money relies on this happening on this date, that's urgency, right? Whereas there's any, you mentioned core banking upgrade, replacement earlier, I don't think any bank wants to keep their old core. Some of them were put in 1967, for God's sake. I don't think anybody's in love with Hogan, or having to upgrade a mainframe every few years. But there's a guaranteed outcome if they do.
Yeah.
And if you adopt a new technology and you spend $150 million with the systems integrator to make it work, that might put your smiling face on the front page of the newspaper. That's wrong. So I think there's that real anxiety. But if, all the institutional customers got together and said, it's time to upgrade core, I think we'd have a different outcome.
Yeah. Now, one of the promises that I've made to all of my subscribers is we never talk about price. We don't talk about tokens and the kind of speculative nature of crypto. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you was that obviously that is a world that exists, and it's probably the one that gets way more kind of eyeballs and media attention and public attention than the cool stuff that you've done with ANZ as an example, right? How have you found, kind of, the challenge and overcoming the challenge of kind of legitimizing and kind of adding credibility to this industry, given all of the things that you kind of have to, always, kind of bat away and come up against?
Yeah, look, it's heartbreaking. Lots of good people lose their jobs, and lots of good companies disappear on the back of, greedy people with, the sharks, always sharks swimming in the water, any new venture, just looking for signs of blood. And we saw that FTX, talking of malfeasance, disaster that's still playing out in the courts. 30,000 Australians lost a whole bunch of money because of that and had a pretty ordinary Christmas, I would have imagined. I believe the average deposit was $100,000. So that's appalling. And everything that we do in this space gets more scrutiny than any other organisation that I've repped for, Dexter. And unsurprisingly, because of that, you've seen, since UST depegged in April, May last year, our market total global crypto market cap has gone from 3 trillion to 1 trillion. It's bouncing back now, but you can imagine what that contraction did to all of the exchanges, all the funds, the Fireblocks network, and all of our customers have hurt, some more than others. It's weird, and good people, innovators doing the right thing by their staff and by their customers.
It's had a really kind of cascading effect as well, right? Because if you think, right, the tech industry, particularly fintech, even if you weren't in crypto, I'm sure some of your treasury would have been in tokens and Bitcoin, right? Given the nature of the work that you do. And you think of the people involved in it, right? If you're a crypto native, you're typically going to work for a tech firm, right? So I think is the right. So we've seen this real impact on the startup industry as well. And I've just seen it in people's kind of mindset around how much risk are they now prepared to take. You'd have been way more prepared to take a big risk of going out and starting your own business and kind of launching an idea. If you've got $250,000 in Bitcoin there, but if that's now worth $50,000, you might be thinking a bit differently, right?
Exactly, of course. And I've seen organizations, I've committed deals to head office for organizations that were building out crypto businesses, and they've gone, we're just going to wait and see now, Shane, and understandably so. But it's really interesting, Dexter. When I started in 21, there was a real concentration of VC money and all the smart developers and all the smart builders focused on crypto. Now, particularly in the last 60, 90 days, they're all focused on Web3. They're doing various Web3 plays.
Yeah. They haven't moved to Chat GPT yet then.
I was in a place called Upside DAO this morning, a DAO here in Cremorne, just in a shared office in Richmond today, and having a yarn about AI and all of the funded plays in all sorts of different silos that Chat GPT and its the sort of similar offerings right across this spectrum of go-to-market strategies are playing out. So the world's going to be a different place very soon.
Yeah, it is. It is. Now, we talked a little bit about talent there. Have you seen there's been a difference in the mindset, particularly when it comes to attracting talent? Because I'm sure when you guys launched, there would have been a lot of excitement around a business like Fireblocks, or any Web3 business. Over the last 6 months or so, I think I do get the sense that kind of excitement has waned a little. Have you seen there's been a difference in kind of people's perspective when it comes to hiring?
Yeah, frankly, with Fireblocks, no. I think the natives, the crypto natives and the people that are in this industry know that we're a plumber in many ways, and what's the metaphor? We're selling picks and shovels. Yeah, and doesn't matter if you're discovering the gold or not, you're still going to need that plumbing in order to. I mixed the metaphor there. Forgive me. You're still going to need the pick and the shovel, right? So we're that infrastructure player. Has it hurt our market? Yeah. Have we had a slowdown? Of course. But the very nature of our business and being a leader in that infrastructure layer is certainly helping us acquire, high IQ, high EQ people high skill, high will, all that sort of thing
Yeah.
that you need to exist in a hyperscale organization. Because you don't get one job in this sort of role, mate.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
you get
absolutely.
to milk the cows and shear the sheep and wash the dishes and
yeah,
take the litter out.
Yeah, look, and that kind of attitude's key as well, right? It's yeah, it's just a really difficult kind of role to fulfill. Whatever it is, as you mentioned, you got to wear many hats, and it's just about getting things done and making things happen
at pace.
Yeah.
Because the cavalry is not coming.
Yeah, and look, with a lot of uncertainty as well, right? That's the other thing. And one of the things that I've found has been very difficult with people who've come from more traditional kind of environments or corporate environments is to accept and deal with the frustration that comes with changing the goalposts. Yeah, a number of times in a 12-month period, right? It's kind of, I remember one founder saying to me, we don't have 1-year strategies, 3-year strategies, 5-year strategies. I've got a 10-year vision and a 90-day plan. It's kind of
well, at least he's got a 90-day plan, I'd say. Well done.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can stick to it.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to kind of also, one of the kind of cool things about the podcast is the people, a lot of the people that are listening to this maybe haven't moved into Web3 or the Web3 space yet. So they kind of might still be in fintech. And one of the cool things that, I've been getting feedback on is that people have been inspired by seeing others who've made that step or that leap. And so I was keen really to get your advice on, what people can or should do if they're interested in this space. And let's say they might be working in a bank, they might be in TradFi, they could be in fintech. Are there kind of any podcasts or any kind of resources that you go to that have helped you kind of really learn and get more kind of immersed in this space?
Yeah, I think a podcast is a great place to start in your spare time. I think the community is really important. I'm surprised that, mate, I've sold databases for a living, and there's 200 different database vendors out there and everybody hates everybody. Well, this community is not like that.
Yeah.
And I'm from country Queensland, mate. I'm the least kumbaya person on the planet. But there really is this warmth in, I don't know if you've struck the Australian DeFi Association or any number of meetups or Blockchain Australia events, or, you and I were talking about NFT Fest before, which sounds sort of a little bit off kilter to start with, but it was an incredibly well curated event that was hugely well patronised. And the level of speakers in there, you talk about bankers, leaders in retail and right across the industry, as well as all the DJs, a bunch of lawyers in the room too. I should there might have been a police officer.
Lots of lawyers.
A lot of lawyers. But it's true. There's a real community going on. So seeking out a community event, and that's not a hard thing to do. Rolling up, you'll be embraced. Yeah. It really will be. There's a lot of humble, intellectually curious people out there because this space is still really new. I have one friend that started Bitcoin mining in 2012, and I don't know anybody that was in this space earlier than that. So it's still incredibly new. Everybody's still learning. There's new use cases coming up all the time, and I've mentioned a few of them today, and some of them are really cool. Some are incredibly anodyne, but I look at what the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange just did with us on effectively tokenizing government debt or a bond. And I mean, you think, well, that's something that is going to rush into production. That's going to be meaningful. But I get distracted, Dexter. You asked me about podcasts. There's 3. Real Vision, I really like, with Raoul Pal. Yeah. He's a bit of a controversial cat, but I think he talks a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think I find that from the economic perspective, I think it's a really, I really like the insights that he shares. A bit controversial, as you say, but
yeah, that's all right. Did you hear the episode with Anthony Scaramucci on?
I didn't know.
CJ is probably 6 or 8 months old.
Yeah, I'll seek that out.
That dude does not have a confidence problem with me.
Yeah, we did work with Donald Trump, right? So
2 days.
Yeah. That's why he lasted 2 days, I think.
Yeah, he lasted one Scaramucci for 2 days. Unchained? You struck up Unchained?
I haven't. No, I've not listened to that one.
Really good, really good. Right at the edge of use cases. They're very good at defining, sort of giving you foundational insight into the problem that an NFT generated by Ticketek might solve, for instance. That sort of thing. I think they're really good at grounding it. And a bit more gossipy, but one I like a lot, called Bankless.
Yeah.
Bankless,
yeah. Cool. And look, you kind of mentioned earlier that there's a business that you think is going to do great things. So you privy to say who they might be, or is there anybody out there that you've got your eye on that you think we should watch out for in 2023?
Yeah, I had a look at a company called Sensand, Sensand. I first met the founders, who, highly accomplished entrepreneurs previous to entering in this space. Maybe 10 or 11 months ago, I met them. They're doing something very interesting with ACCUs. What's that? Australian Certified Carbon Unit. Yeah,
right.
So they've got a tokenization play around that, and they're merging ag tech data. So they shape, one of the great problems with this space, with the ESG space, is greenwashing, as you know, and the ability for mums and dads to trade in this space as well. So they're solving a couple of really big problems. I really like the way that they've built their business. They haven't cut any corners. There's no MVP. This feels like a very mature organization, and they're yet to launch. So I'm going to track them closely. I'm going to stay close to them. I think they're going to be wildly successful and get make a lot of people in Australia sit up and take notice.
Fantastic. And what exciting things can we expect from Fireblocks this year?
We keep our product roadmap pretty close to our chest. You understand that we've got those 46 competitors looking over our shoulder. It's fair to say that we've got a great beachhead in that crypto native space. We've dominated that space. It's also fair to say that we've done extraordinarily well in the traditional finance space. We're trusted there. And that's not because we're smart, funny, and good looking. That's because we've got a real technology break over the competitors, the way that we secure your keys, and the way that we enable you to secure your keys, the way that we get rid of the opportunity for, collusion within your organization. So we've got a great break there. I think our focus is going to be on where we're going to make the biggest noise this year is going to be in payments. Payment organizations are ripe for disruption, I believe, whilst Australia has an amazing domestic payments infrastructure. If you want to send money overseas, or if you happen to be overseas trying to distribute cash around, it's incredibly problematic, expensive, and slow. The blockchain can solve that. Fireblocks can help solve that. Stable coins can solve that. So there's going to be a huge focus there, and I expect us to be equally successful there. And I think traditional retailers are going to follow the lead of those luxury brands, and we'd love to. We're calling that Web3, and we'd love to be the key infrastructure provider in that space as well.
Awesome.
I think that's going to be the new great 2023
focus.
Cool. But who knows, mate? This is
we're kind of the last 3 years have been unprecedented. Right? We keep saying so. So this one just goes. Yeah. No. Before we wrap up, there's obviously a lot of we get a lot of people listening to this show. Some of them could be people who might want to work with Fireblocks. Some of them could be people who might want to find out more about the technology and the products that you offer. First one, on the product side, if anybody's interested in finding out more, where do they go?
Our our website, fireblocks.com, is the best place to start. Of course, my name's Shane Verner. I live on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You can always just reach out directly to me. I'll be delighted to it. But we have a heavily curated website, and fireblocks.com is great for product information and easy to contact us via that. You'll get into the business development team and they'll look after you. So that's the best place to start there.
Cool.
And as far as hiring, reach out direct to me.
Cool. Excellent. Well, Shane, it's been fantastic to chat to you. Good luck with navigating a very exciting 2023.
I hope so, mate. We've got to turn around.
Yeah.
It was a pretty ordinary 2022.
Well, look, it's, what can I say? Onwards and upwards. And as you've pointed out quite a few times, we are still very much at the beginning, right?
Yeah, it's incredibly early in this space.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing you around at some of the events, Shane. And until then, keep safe. Folks, you can catch up with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Make sure to give us a like and subscribe if you're watching us. And if you're listening on the podcast, please give us a follow and a 5-star review. It really helps me bring on great guests like Shane and also spread the word about what's happening in the blockchain space. Until the next episode, stay safe. Blockchain Chatter is presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. We find world-class talent to build world-class Fintech ventures, and you can find us at tier1people.com.